As you can imagine, there's been an awful lot of interest in this story. So let's put some questions to Vic Goddard, the head teacher at Passmore's Academy in Harlow, and also Ros McMullen, a former head teacher who now advises school leaders. I know it's a busy period for you, so thanks so much both for joining us. Vic, let's start with you. How have your teaching staff, how have you reacted to this notion that it's going to be up to the teachers to decide the grades of your pupils?
It's rare that I feel sorry for the government around its decisions around education, but I think this is probably one of those cases where to try and make something fair for all young people when they've all had such different experiences over the course of the last 18 months, really, but certainly the last year, I feel for them, and I'm not certain there's a better option. So I think the Prime Minister probably was right in saying this is the best compromise in a very difficult situation.
That's interesting. Ros, do you agree that this is the fairest option, that there was realistically, you don't want to see the fiasco, the chaos that happened last year? Is this the fairest way to do it?
Given where we are now, absolutely it is, yes. I personally believe that there should have been some thought put into this immediately following last year. But given where we are now, this is absolutely the best thing to do, yes.
So how do you make sure, Vic, that those grades are fair, that the teachers are, of course, they're professional and they want the best for the children, but that they do grade the children according to their abilities?
Yeah, and I think schools are good at moderating and standardising results. And I think back to our process last summer where the staff did all their assessments. They looked at all the grades young people had got over the course of a couple of years, and then they gave them a final grade. Now, to make sure there was no unconscious bias and it wasn't just the quiet ones that got the best grades, all of those grades were then given to myself. I looked at every grade for every student, and they'd removed all the names, ethnicity, gender, everything. I didn't know who each child was, but what I could see was a list of subjects, a list of grades that they achieved through assessments and other things through the time, and then I saw an end grade. And if they made sense and correlated, then that was okay. If they didn't, we went back and looked at it again. I'm not quite certain where the grade inflation fixation comes from within the government. I'll be honest, and with you guys, I mean, we have to accept the fact that this year group of young people is living a different life. We should not be needing to compare them to previous years. We need to do what's right for them because of what they've had to do.
So, Ros, in your capacity now, you're advising school leaders. How do you ensure, let's touch upon grade inflation because there's been so much spoken about it. How do you ensure that that doesn't happen? Are you concerned about it?
No, I'm not concerned about it at all. The thing is that exams are, teachers can assess based on a set of criteria, and they have tons of evidence, portfolios of evidence. And Vic has taken you through exactly how teachers and head teachers can use that and remove unconscious bias. That's not a problem for schools. What schools can't do, and this is what exams, the way they were assessed, did, is they cannot stratify according to national performance, ensuring that the national percentage at each grade stays the same. And that's really what exams have been doing. They've been stratifying as well as looking at how the students perform. So this year, what will happen is it will be much more according to the criteria of how the students have performed with whole portfolios of evidence. It doesn't concern me about grade inflation at all, because I know that the schools, the teachers, the head teachers, the moderation against a set of criterion will be very rigorous.
And when it comes to some of the questions, like I say, we've had so many questions, and anybody that wants to get in touch with the BBC, it's the hashtag is BBC Your Questions, and we do our best to put those questions to experts such as my esteemed guest now. But we've got one particular question that's quite specific. Alia is asking, will teachers use the whole year's work, Vic? Adding that some children only perform well closer to exam time. I mean, we all know what it's like when you've got a deadline, you start really focusing in, and exams focus your mind on it. So how will teachers be monitoring that?
The guidance is quite clear, actually. We are not predicting grades. We are not saying if we carried on teaching them, this is where we think they would have got to. We are basing it on what they've done, what they know, and what they've shown. So from that perspective, that will remove a lot of that issue. That will remove a lot of that. Our job is to give them the best opportunity to show the best of themselves. And the reality is that some young people in my school every year 3, 4, 5 young people don't turn up for their exams, or they come from a family that thinks the moment they turn 16, they should be at work. So those young people would have got U's or X's. Well, this year they'll get grades, which means my school's results will look better. I'm not quite certain why we think what vested interest we have in inflating grades, because all that happens is Ofsted comes next year and goes, well, you can't live up to those grades. You've got it wrong. So there is no vested interest in us inflating grades, because those young people will leave and we are still in the job and we still have to answer the questions. So it's a non-story for me. I understand it isn't for you, but it's a non-story for me. We have to do what is right for education as well as our young people, and we will.
It's really interesting to see both of you, just for our viewers that didn't see, when Vic was talking about grade inflation, Ros very much nodding her head. Ros, you're in accord with this grade inflation suggestion that it's a non-starter, it won't happen.
Absolutely. The problem is that if people are hitting a standard, if children are hitting a standard, and we can look at across all their performance, across tests, across essays, across everything we know about them, and we know they have hit that standard, that is not a problem. That's not grade inflation. What exam boards have done, what the system has been constructed to do in recent years, is to say, well, we're only going to allow a certain percentage of students to get an A star, an A, a B, a C, and so on. I don't necessarily think that is at all helpful, because actually exams aren't really, for me, for the purpose of stratifying a cohort. They're for the purpose of young people being rewarded for what they know and what they can do and what they have demonstrated. And that is what teachers know best and can do at A level, as I was talking about, and also at GCSE.
OK, thank you for clarifying that. And I know that the headlines are concentrating on that grade inflation, so it's really good just to get your clarity on that. Mike is asking a particular question, and Vic, let's put it to you. It's regarding key workers and vulnerable children, and whether, this is quite an interesting one, whether they've been at an advantage because they have had full lessons at school and low pupil-teacher ratio. Of course, we've got to remember that schools are opening for everyone potentially from the 8th of March, but schools have been open throughout. Mike asks, should they be judged to a different benchmark?
No. Because what you'll find is that the young people that have had to go into school in order to support our NHS and all of our critical workers or are vulnerable have been following the same programme as the kids are at home often. You know, the work that's been done live online, well, the young people are sitting in school doing that. We're offering supervision in those situations. And to say they've been advantaged when they look out of the window and they see the sun outside and they're stuck in their classroom, I think is it's just beyond ridiculous. These young people have not had an advantage. In fact, you know, their mental health wise, they may have had some advantage by being amongst others, but they've had some disadvantage by being singled out to be treated differently. So no, that's far from being a concern.
OK, I think pretty clear there, Mike. I hope that answers your question. And Sheila is asking, so Ros, let's put this to you. What's the situation for external exam candidates? Firstly, Ros, what does Sheila mean by external exam candidates for those that don't understand that particular aspect of this?
External exam candidates are students who are not registered in a school, people taking exams externally. And I've got to be quite honest, I haven't read the guidance on that because I've been involved in looking at what schools are going to do. But there is guidance on that. I don't know, Vic, have you looked at that, or have you been too obsessed with looking at schools like me?
The clarity around that is still quite difficult because we do have externals that sit exams at our school. We may get a phone call from somebody who's, has left school many years ago but wants to sit their maths exam, and so they come in and we just facilitate an exam space for them. Obviously, that doesn't mean we know them and doesn't mean we have any knowledge based on them. So that's a really good question, and I think one that probably still needs answering.
Sheila, we're going to have to get back to you on that one. Hashtag BBC Your Questions for the time being. Vic Goddard and Ros McMullen, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're busy, so really appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you.
Thank you.